Okay, once more, welcome. My name is Swami Ramananda. I recognize many of you that are here, but I may be new to some of you. Let's see if I check all the names of people. Good. I'm offering this workshop from the San Francisco Institute. And I have, as I mentioned before, I have one person here with me in person. Everyone else is calling in online. So let's go ahead and begin by chanting. Some of you know very well, we like to begin our programs by chanting to come together through the medium of sound. Since we can't really chant out loud together over Zoom, I'll chant briefly, call and response, and you can join in as you like from home. Let me make one more adjustment here. So take a steady seated position. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. Probably it works best if everyone is muted because there's a delay in the sound. And let's just center ourselves for a moment. Take a few deep breaths. And chant Om 3 times together. Om. Om. And I'll chant a responsive chant. You can join in as you like. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari 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 Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari 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 Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari 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 Hari Om. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Hari Om. Om Shanti. So Let me know if at any point the sound is not sufficient. This is a two-part workshop. The second part being next Tuesday, same time, 28th of February. So I'll suggest some things that we might do in between these two sessions. And since we're a relatively small group, I'll ask, is there any, I'll just ask any of you to unmute yourself and speak. Is there any particular reason that you're here? Anything you're hoping that we'll speak about? Or any question that you have already with you as we get ready to begin? There may not be anything like that, but I thought it was worth checking. Okay. Since we are I guess I'll just say again, since we are a small group, I'll just invite you at any point to unmute yourself or raise your hand if you want to ask something. I'll start by having us think about something together. And that is, what would we consider the purpose of yoga practice, the purpose of the spiritual path? Because I don't want to speak only about yoga and yoga practice, but of spiritual life in general. We often, in the yoga tradition, we often speak about realizing our true nature, or experiencing our spiritual consciousness. And while those are true, those make sense, they're also a little abstract, a little vague. What does it mean to experience our true nature? One of the reasons I like talking about love and its relationship to spiritual life is that, in a way, we could say that love is an expression, an experience of our true nature. The problem with spiritual consciousness or true nature is it's very abstract. The mind can't really grasp what we think of as God or God consciousness. It's too difficult for the mind to comprehend. But rather than intellectually understand something, we do experience things. We experience a kind of natural contentment or peace that's within us when we practice yoga, when we meditate. We experience love in different forms. And these experiences are very real to us. And one way to think of this experience of our true nature, of our God consciousness. And we see this over and over again in the words of many different saints and sages when we talk about spiritual life. You all will know this. The Dalai Lama once said, kindness is my religion. 4 words. Kindness is my religion. He says it so beautifully. One of the central teachings of Jesus is love thy neighbor as thyself. Right? In the Christian tradition, there's the 10 commandments. Right? But one of the primary sort of teaching that sums up all the teachings, love thy neighbor as thyself. A doctor, psychologist, therapist that has written a few books that I really appreciate, Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. Some of you may have heard of her. And she speaks about the purpose of human life as learning to love fully. So we see this theme of love as a central element of spiritual life. But the world that we live in doesn't offer us that message. From a yogic point of view, one of the main causes of our suffering is the illusion that we're all separate. And this is the kind of message that we dwell in, that our world imbues in us or ingrains in us from day one of our birth, that we're all separate. Certainly in a science-oriented culture like ours, we all appear to be separate, right? What we can perceive, right? We live in a culture that says seeing is believing, and what we can perceive is separate, right? Physical forms that are separate from each other. And so, of course, we go about our lives, creating a life, looking for happiness, pursuing our lives based on this kind of limited understanding, this sense of separation. As separate beings, our lives lack a certain kind of meaning that comes from knowing our connection. Our lives become a relentless effort to acquire and achieve the things that seem to bring happiness. Is this all making sense to you? When we're in person, I can really connect with you more easily. I'm getting some head nodding. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, if we live our lives based on this sense of separation, then we end up so much dwelling in the head, measuring, planning, judging, right? Doing all the things that we need to do to manage our lives in this modern world, including creating a Zoom account, learning how to log into a registration system, and I've got an Excel spreadsheet with 100 passwords of all these different sites. And right, I remember when I was a younger man, I didn't even use a computer, much less have 100 different passwords to all these different sites that I have to log into in order to see my bank account or for any place that I want to do business with. Our lives become dominated by this rational reasoning, head-oriented way of living. And all that keeps us separated from the heart. It keeps us disconnected to be dwelling in the head so much. We tend to override the more subtle messages of the heart. We may not have time to deal with our emotional selves because we're too busy trying to accomplish our tasks, right? Trying to manage our lives. Right? We tend to learn how to push through. And in so many ways, our culture encourages that, right? We have the Nike logo, the Nike slogan, right? Just do it. It says it right there. Just do it. It means, no, don't pay attention to what you're feeling. If you're sad, just do it, right? Buck up, push through, right? This is the message we get. And that leads to a lot of suffering. I was even so let me find it here. I was so struck by an interview that I read from a Dr. Dean Ornish. Many of you know who that is. A doctor that did that landmark study on the reversal of heart disease. So in this interview that I read, I'm going to give myself a little more light here. Just one second. I can use. Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can use this as well.
Oh, yeah, that'll help you too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll read a little bit of this interview. He writes, love and intimacy are at the root of what makes us sick and what makes us well.
Oh.
Study after study find that people who feel lonely are many times more likely to get cardiovascular disease than those who have a strong sense of connection and community. I'm not aware of any other factor in medicine, not diet, not smoking, not exercise, not genetics, not drugs, not surgery, that has a greater impact on our quality of life, incidence of illness, and premature death. So he's talking about scientific, right, medical research that shows what a difference it makes if people have a strong sense of connection, if they have love and intimacy. Right? Swami Satchidananda once commented on this when he was speaking to a group of doctors and nurses. Some of you have heard me tell this little anecdote before. At a hospital in Virginia, he was speaking to a group of healthcare practitioners, and someone asked him, from a spiritual point of view, can you talk about disease? Is there some kind of spiritual perspective on disease that you could share with us? And he went to a whiteboard in the room and he wrote the word illness. And then he wrote the word wellness. Then he went back to the word illness and he circled the I, and to the word wellness and he circled the we. And that was his answer. So he's highlighting that same understanding that when we think of ourselves as an individual disconnected, right? We separate ourselves from this sense of community and connection. That's an essential part of human life, a natural part of human life. Right? We're born in families, tribes. We're meant to feel connected to each other. But somehow in our modern life, more and more, we experience ourselves as disconnected. People tend not to stay in the same jobs for a lifetime anymore. Families are often broken up. Right? Divorce is more and more common. And even living in a certain location, whereas people used to live in villages close together, even living in a certain location is changed dramatically in the last 50 years. People tend to travel around and live in different cities for different periods of life over time. So we see how, in essence, we can say, we see how many people suffer a great deal from this sense of disconnection. You want to speak up, Sarani? You want to comment?
I just want to say that you're breaking up for me. Your voice is breaking up. So I don't know if other people are experiencing that, or is it just me?
Yeah, I'm experiencing that also.
Good. Thank you. That's helpful. Let me see if I can do anything about that. Let's see. Let's see. No, I'm not quite sure what the problem is. I'll experiment and see if I can improve it.
It was fine until about maybe a minute before I said anything. So I don't know if something changed at that point or not.
Nothing changed in my setup.
You turn the light on, but
That shouldn't affect it, yeah.
Now
Well-
your voice is sounding clear.
Is that sounding a little better? Okay, I did move the microphone. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Sarani. Please speak up again if that changes or something happens. Fortunately, let me continue because I've kind of painted the kind of a dim picture so far. But I want to make the point that we talk about healing. We're talking about something that doesn't just mean disease. Healing signifies something a little deeper than that, and often something that happens by engaging that has the capacity of having problems with the sound again.
Yeah.
Oh dear,
so sorry.
I haven't done a thing to change the setup. I'm so surprised. Huh. Hmm.
May I look and see if there's any loose connections?
Maybe if all of us went off video and just were listening to you and not being able to see each other, but listening to you, sometimes that can help. Should we try it?
Shouldn't be necessary. That's a shame. Because then we lose the sense of connection with each other.
I know, but I want to be able to hear you. Let's at least try it and see if it helps.
Okay,
Okay.
everyone can go off video. Now, since I can't see you, you're going to have to give me verbal feedback. I'll just keep talking and you tell me in a moment if it's better. No, I was just saying that healing is something that happens on a deeper level, not just on a purely physical level. And fortunately, this illusion of separation that we live under is something that we have many opportunities to overcome or transcend, especially because we're also hardwired to want to connect with each other. And even in a kind of driven mentality that many people live under, there's still the desire to connect with her, often in the form of partnerships, relationships, friendships, but loving relationships as well. Now, how is the sound? Just going to check.
It's better, but whoever has a camera on them and in the room, maybe they could turn that off. I think that would help.
Okay.
Oh, mine.
Yeah. Not you, not Ramananda, but the other camera.
Yeah, maybe that helps.
I have two cameras in the room with me. So that camera. I see.
The camera that's pointing away from you into the room where it says Integral Yoga SF up on the screen. Yeah, there we go. Try that and see if that helps.
Okay, let's see if that makes a difference. So basically, the point I'm making now is that we're also hardwired to connect with each other. And even though we spend a lot of our lives dwelling in the head, we also fall in love. Right? We don't struggle. It's not like climbing a mountain. We say we fall in love. Right? It just happens. And people enjoy and look forward to and look for those opportunities to connect with another person. We do experience loving relationships. It helps us override some of that sense of separation. Right? We're able to connect with each other and experience, you could say we're able to bypass the head and connect through the heart. Is the sound okay now, or did it not change?
It is better.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sorry not to see you, but let me keep going. Through loving relationships, we learn to feel our connection and to operate on that connection. We enjoy giving things to each other. The very things that we have made great effort to acquire for ourselves, the very things that we may consider something precious to us, is a source of happiness.
We lost you again.
Sound has disappeared again.
We lost you.
Maybe you want to try to turn off Wi-Fi and turn on right again. You should be able to not lose us, but maybe that helps.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to try something completely different that should change the sound. Can you hear me better now?
Loud and clear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I had two cameras operating and I had the sound out of one. Now I've changed the sound to the other computer. And I suspect that you'll be able to come back on video now, all of you.
So you're welcome to try that. And I think we will have eliminated that problem. Okay, good. I'm glad to see you all again. Yeah. I'm now speaking about relationships and loving relationships, and how when we love someone, we're able to transcend that tendency to just think about ourselves, to be so focused just on I. Right? We're able to begin thinking in terms of we. Right? And that already begins to shift this this source of illness, you could say, or that sense of disconnection, that sense of separation. And we feel ourselves. And if there is a lasting, loving relationship that grows, it diminishes more and more that sense of separation, because your sense of who you are, it becomes intimately connected to another person. And if there's children in that relationship, it expands even further. So loving relationships help us move beyond this illness, the sense of illness and I-ness and sense of separation. And gradually, we learn a lot from loving relationships. You could say that attempting to really establish a long-term love relationship is a spiritual path by itself, because there's so much that we learn from that. Right? When we really live, when you live with someone, or you work closely with someone over a long period of time, you see all the kind of weaknesses, the defects, all the idiosyncrasies of that other person. They'll have some verification from that, of some of you that have relationships, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, Michael Lerner, who just spoke with us on Sunday, he said, when you fall in love with someone, or you establish a relationship with someone, he said, it's a mistake to think that there's just that one person that you're relating to. He said, it's more like, each person is more like a boarding house. And there's the one person that you're falling in love with, but then there's the other person that comes out at night, and the other person that comes out when they're stressed, and the other person that doesn't come out ever at all, right? And you can't quite get to know that person. So you end up dealing with these different sides of any one person that you fall in love with, and learning how to expand your ability to accept and appreciate and relate to all these different aspects of that one person. And then if there's children, it expands even further. Right? And so a loving relationship calls for us to grow in our ability to accept and understand another person's point of view, to look beyond our own personal desires, our limited sense of what's right. Right? When you're by yourself, you decide how everything looks, how everything is set up. When you live with another person, now it's a whole different ball game. And then when there's children involved, it expands even further.
Don't you think that also the other person reflects back to you your issues and the things that you yourself need to work on that you weren't really aware of, but the other person can see them more clearly? I think that's a really big part of it, and helps keep your ego in check.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You said it beautifully, Sarani. The other, your own limited thinking, your own selfishness, your own personal preferences, they get exposed in this relationship. And while, especially if it's a relationship where partners are committed to working together on the relationship, when one person has a tendency to identify the other person as the problem, they inevitably have to ultimately look back at themselves
Right.
and see that they're equally,
If not more.
if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember Jack Kornfield once in a lecture said, each person in a relationship should think that they have to give 80%. And if both people give 80%, then it can work out. That was, I thought that was an interesting way to say it. Yeah, that's what it takes. Maeve, I'm looking at these people, but you're here with me. You speak up if you have something to share. I want to read. And of course, a relationship is a way that we're taught how to expand our understanding and acceptance of others, how to grow in our ability to have compassion for others. But ultimately, we want it to grow even beyond that. And that's what really makes a relationship into a spiritual path, is when that relationship helps you expand your ability to love beyond that relationship. Master Shivananda, the teacher of Swami Satchidananda, he used to summarize the whole of yoga teaching and philosophy in a chant that he would do. Some of you have heard it before. Serve, love, give, purify, meditate, realize. Do good, be kind, and be compassionate. Serve, love, give, purify, meditate, realize. But you see the first three words, serve, love, give. The primary, right? He gives primary importance to those three words, serve, love, give. A quote from Swami Satchidananda. To get God's grace means to get the grace of your neighbors. God doesn't need your worship and service directly. Worship the creation, you have worshiped God. Serve the creation, you have served God. Basically, meaning, serve your neighbors, right? If you want to serve God, then serve your neighbors. I want to do a couple of things to have us do something experiential. Maybe this is a good time to do it, just to work with the concept of love and to understand its place in the spiritual path. So for this, let's do a little experiential kind of exercise that you can do with your eyes closed. If you want to change your position, your posture at all, feel free to do that. Make yourself comfortable. If you're comfortable doing so, then close your eyes. So we'll just do a little visualization practice that's experiential. What I want you to do is visualize, call to mind someone that you love wholeheartedly, as we might say, unconditionally. Could be a person. A pet often works well for this exercise because of the way that pets tend to be so easy to love. Think of that person, no matter what their behavior, even when they make mistakes, even when they're sick and they need your attention, you love them no less. Picture that person and feel what it feels like in your heart. Really hold on to that feeling and thinking of that person. Sit with that feeling. Then consider this feeling that you have is an actual expression of your spiritual self. Eckhart Tolle says, to love another person is to recognize the God in them. This feeling that you're in touch with now is an expression of the Divine Mother manifest in the world. It is the presence of the Buddha nature in you. This is your divinity in expression. And see if you can turn this energy towards yourself. Are you able to offer to yourself some of this same unconditional love? Even with your shortcomings, even with your mistakes, just like those that you love, you are fully worthy of this kind of love. If it's hard to offer yourself or to hold this feeling towards yourself, just think of someone else who loves you that way. And we can practice this idea with a few lines from metta meditation or loving kindness meditation. If you like, speak first to the person that you pictured or the pet. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. Just visualize yourself conveying this message from the heart to that person. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. And again, see if you can turn that intention towards yourself, towards your own mind with its struggles, frustrations, moods. Do your best to offer the same intention towards yourself. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. You can put it in your own words. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. So we'll end this little experiential session by having you just assess, did you find this healing to feel this expression of love, to offer it to someone and or to yourself? And then consider if this ability to express love, this opportunity to express love, appreciation, support, is something that you can make more space for in your life, or you need to make more space for. Maybe not. Maybe so. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. I know, at least for some people that I've talked to about this, there's such a tendency to be busy with managing life, accomplishing tasks, making a living, taking care of duties, that there's not enough time for loving relationships, for doing things that we love. And I want to talk about love in a more spiritual way as well. Though a relationship can be a spiritual path, I wanted to talk about a different form of love. Because ultimately, I think we all have to learn that another person cannot be the source of happiness. Of course, loving relationships are a beautiful thing in our lives, not to be taken for granted. But they can't be the ultimate source of happiness for us. And any loving relationship ultimately also brings us some suffering, either because we lose the partner because they pass away, or they move away, or the relationship breaks up, or because the partner suffers. It can be great suffering for us to watch our partner or our loved one suffering. So it's inevitable that if we think of this other person as the source of our happiness, that we ultimately run into and experience how it's not possible. That we ultimately suffer ourselves from that misunderstanding. I want to read a little from Khalil Gibran, from the Prophet. Some of you would be familiar with this. He has these different poetic teachings on many different topics, and this is a teaching on love. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll read part of it. When love beckons to you, follow him. Though his ways are hard and steep, and when his wings enfold you, yield to him. Though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. And when he speaks to you, believe in him. Though his voice may shatter your dreams, as the north wind lays waste the garden. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so is he for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your heights and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. I thought that last few phrases really beautifully expresses. Even as he ascends to your heights and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, there's few things that feel so good than to really be loved by someone. But so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Meaning that anytime that we cling to another person as the source of our happiness, that ultimately gets exposed. That falsehood has to get exposed. We ultimately can love more fully when we're whole within ourselves, when we're coming from a place of wholeness rather than a place of needing another person to complete us. This always reminds me of the Tom Cruise movie. What was the name of that movie? Sardi knows what movie I'm talking about. He plays in it with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Renee Zellweger. And that's where the phrase, "show me the money," came from. But in the movie, he says to Renee Zellweger, he says, "You complete me." And it's very romantic. It's a beautiful scene. You complete me. But when I heard that, I thought, wait a second, that's not right. It feels like that, but it's not really true. No other person can complete you. Anyway, the point I want to make is that human life and all of its challenges, and especially the challenge of loving and wanting to be loved, ultimately drives us to seek in a deeper way. I think it ultimately comes to everyone maybe not in this lifetime, but eventually, that we have to seek beyond and find that source of love within ourselves, right? That source of connection within ourselves. We have to find that spiritual presence that is unchanging, right? We have to find and tap into the natural flow of love, the natural river of love that's meant to flow through our hearts outward, rather than thinking of love as something that we acquire from someone else. Right? Does that make sense? It's in a way, it's a mistake to think that love is something that we gain, that we acquire, that we win the love of another person, and that's how we experience love. In fact, I think it's the love of another person that makes us feel safe enough to allow our hearts to fully open and give love. And that's where we really experience it. That's what our hearts are meant to do. Right? The heart is like a faucet. The love comes out, not goes in. Right? So it ultimately pushes us to find that source of love within us. But on the spiritual path, it's difficult to relate to some spiritual consciousness that's so abstract. And that's why in every spiritual tradition, there are symbols, there are saints, there are deities, there are principles, there are sound formulas, there are different things that help us feel a connection to the divine, right? That represent that divine presence to us. And for that purpose, I'm going to screen share something. I think I have it set up that I can screen share it. No, not yet. Okay, one more second. I want to screen share something. Okay, can you see this little graph that I've set up?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It says it just above that, it says, what inspires you to feel a higher power or a spiritual principle in the world? Maybe I'm going to give you one. I think I've got a copy of that I can give you. Yeah. Yeah, there's the diagram they're looking at. For some people, there's a symbol, like the cross, or a light, like the light on the altar represents that spiritual light. Right? The yantra represents all the different manifestations of that central bindu. For many people, it's a saint, it's a being that inspires them to know and believe in, to have faith in the presence of the divine, like Jesus or Mother Mary, or the hugging saint, Amachi, Saint Francis or the Buddha, right? These are people that were so powerful in their presence and their ability to love that they inspire other people to see that spiritual truth embodied. Yet for other people, it could be a deity that somehow they feel this connection to naturally. Lakshmi, Krishna, Shiva. We see this very much in the Hindu tradition. Sound can also do that. Sound and language, mantra can help someone feel a powerful connection. Kirtan Have any of you been to a kirtan where you don't quite understand how, but it melts open, it cracks open your heart, it melts your heart, and you feel this beautiful openness in the chanting of the mantras, in the calling out of God's name in the mantras. Music can evoke that feeling, that openness in the heart. Poetry can touch you because poetry reaches around the intellect and it touches you in a deeper place. And certainly prayer, a sincere prayer, is a powerful way of connecting to this source or this divinity that's within ourselves. But what inspires me to pray? What inspires me to pray is some representation, because I don't naturally feel the presence of God in myself. Right? Few of us do, because we're so familiar with our flaws, right? Our weaknesses, our mistakes. It's hard to imagine that there's a presence of God in myself. Right? That's the beauty of a saint or a sage, of a guru, is somehow they seem to embody that presence. And then it becomes possible to pray to someone like that, to open our hearts and receive guidance. It's a powerful practice. A principle, Mahatma Gandhi based so much of his life and his path on ahimsa, nonviolence, and truth, satya. I quoted the Dalai Lama earlier as saying, kindness is my religion. For many people, compassion becomes a principle that they live by. And for many people, what really inspires them to feel the presence of the divine, of the God consciousness, is something in nature. If you look up at the infinite stars at night, you can't help but be awestruck. If you really consider it, you're awestruck by the infinite nature of the cosmos that's beyond our comprehension. And to know that there must be some higher intelligence behind this creation. The same thing for the full moon or the sunset. It can inspire us to believe in this presence. Even sitting in the redwood trees, if you're living near them like we are here in San Francisco, they have such a powerful presence, such a peaceful presence. I'm going to stop the screen share. Raise your hand if one of those resonated with you, one of those things. Anybody? Okay. Okay. Hopefully everybody has something that inspires you to believe in, to remember, to feel. Right? Not just intellectually, but to feel that there is some higher power, some compassionate presence that's there for us, that's accessible to us. And once we connect to a presence like that, it can be a powerful element of our spiritual life that is healing and transformative. I'll speak a little bit more about healing in part 2 next week, but I want to speak more about how it's spiritually transformative to have this kind of presence, this representation of that divinity in some form. It become a source of strength. It can help us rise above obstacles and access a kind of natural or inner strength. I'll give an example. a little story that I heard about a saint, Ramakrishna. Some of you would have heard of the Saint Ramakrishna, who lived in the late 1800s and early 1900s, who was very widely known throughout India as an incredible being who experienced God's presence in a very powerful, very visceral way. The story goes that a very wealthy person who enjoyed all the sensual pleasures of life, right? The finest foods, the softest fabric, a beautiful home, any kind of sensual pleasure or material pleasure that you could think of, right? That's the lifestyle that he lived. But he became attracted to Ramakrishna and his teachings. And he started to listen more and get more interested in spiritual life. And finally, he worked up the courage to ask Ramakrishna, would you accept me as your disciple? But he said, I want you to know, if you accept me, I'm not going to give up. I can't give up my lifestyle. This is the way that I live. This is what I'm used to. But I'm interested in your teachings, and I do want to follow them. Would you accept me as your disciple? So the story goes, Ramakrishna said, yes, I'll accept you under one condition. Whenever you're going to enjoy something of the sensual pleasure, whenever you're going to partake in some entertainment or some food, some alcohol, whatever you do, offer it to me first. I don't mean physically, but mentally. Visualize that you're offering it to me first, and then go ahead and enjoy it. And so this wealthy person said, okay, sure, I can agree to that. No problem. And he felt like he really had it made in the shade now, because he could enjoy his worldly life and at the same time feel that his spiritual life was somewhat taken care of by having Ramakrishna as his guru. And what happened is, as his love of Ramakrishna grew, he felt uneasy about offering some fine wine that he was going to drink to Ramakrishna. And he really started to think about what's the right kind of thing to offer Ramakrishna. What's pure, what's beautiful enough, what's suitable to offer to someone like Ramakrishna. And he slowly found himself more and more inspired to offer beautiful things, sattvic foods, precious things, that rather than any worldly thing. Right? And his love of Ramakrishna gradually changed him. Without trying to give up any of his bad habits, it gradually changed him. And I don't know any more of the story than that. But it happened naturally out of his love for Ramakrishna, rather than any willpower that he would use. Right? I thought that was a beautiful example, that our willpower is very limited. I don't know about you guys, but have you ever experienced frustration at trying to change yourself from some long-term chronic habit that's really not that good for you? It's not that easy, right? But imagine when you offer it to God in some way. It's a different situation. There's a different dynamic. It's not just you fighting with your own subconscious mind that still clings to that thing that somehow has served some need for you, right? Often our addictive behaviors, they've served some kind of a need for us, right? And we're even though we know it's not good for us intellectually, our willpower is often not enough to let go of it, right? But when you do it out of love for God in some way, right, it changes the dynamic. I'll give another example. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. In the family of my cousins, my aunt and uncle had 3 kids, and the oldest of their 3 children and this is maybe 20 years ago, their kids were all in their 40s and have their own children. So the oldest of the 3 children, her husband was fixing something on the roof one day. He fell off and died. Just like that, he died. About 6 months later, the youngest of their 3 children collapsed at work one day and died. Just like that. In the same year, back to back, tragedies that left these families without a father, right, in both situations. And I marveled at how my cousins came through those tragedies, and they did it because of their faith, because they somehow were able to see these tragic situations as a part of a higher plan, or our God's will. And they couldn't understand it, of course, and they grieved, of course, but they were able to accept it and not be devastated, not be so devastated that they despaired or they gave up. Their faith helped them accept it as somehow a part of God's will. And that's the power of some representation of the divine that we can establish a relationship with and use as a source of strength, a source of guidance, a source of comfort. Let me pause here. I'm kind of stopping nonstop, and I did that guided visualization, and I didn't ask you to give me any feedback about that. Let me just see. Let me pause here. Any questions, comments from what I'm talking about?
I have a thought, and I'm not sure. It's kind of a question, but grief, and you're just talking about your cousins, and if you love, if your life has a lot of love in it, then you're going to also have a lot of grief. It just seems kind of,
Yeah.
You spoke to that at one point. But are the teachings and the faith and the spiritual path, I know that, like you're saying, that the strength of their faith got them through it, but you still feel grief, right? And is there like, how do you navigate it, I guess? How do you move through it? Not that it's, I mean, in my experience, it's never really actually gone, but yeah, that's enough.
It's a great question. And it's absolutely true. They still grieve. In fact, I think it's your faith that enables you to grieve without being overwhelmed by the grief, without being completely, because if the grief is too great, you can't bear it. And you go to addiction, and you go to escape. So grief and love, in a way, are 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. And there's a beauty in that, in a way. I mean, wouldn't it really be sad if you weren't grieving when you lost someone and you didn't grieve? That would be sad. That would be worse. Because then you never really felt that love and that connection with that person. Right? You never allowed yourself to feel it. So the faith gives you the strength to be with that grief, to have it, to grieve it, and to know that that's part of the human path. Yeah, I've got a few great poems that talk about that, but I don't have them with me. I'll bring them next Tuesday.
Okay, great.
But it's a beautiful point that you make.
I think too, when you get to my age, you're the people that you love are passing away. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just part of that stage of life. And
Yeah.
you think you're kind of going to be okay and you're going to be able to navigate it, but it's really, really difficult
Yeah.
to lose people that you love.
Agreed. Yeah. And in a way, that's what partly compels us to seek, right? Something that's unchanging within us. Yeah. And in connecting with the very source of that, connecting to that presence within us, we stay connected to that other person. In a way, our spiritual practice brings into touch with the ground of being that we share with each other. Right? So that spiritual presence is a source of connection with another person on the deepest level. But I appreciate what you're bringing up, Sarani. Grieving is absolutely a part of the spiritual path. It's just as natural as loving. You have a comment, Verena? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I when I worked as a pediatric nurse back in Germany, I saw many families grieving when their child passed, and I saw this exactly the same when they had a religion or something they believed in. They could handle it so much better. And what it also a big thing was they had rituals, and that helps a lot. And then also, you're not alone, so you're grieving together with family or with the community, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that, Verena. I think our culture, the US culture, it's just like in a week you're supposed to be fine. You're supposed to be back to doing everything that you always do. And there's no space given to people to take time off and to go through, to use rituals and being with each other and all of that helps so much with healing.
I think the Jewish tradition has some good guidelines around spending
do.
time together, sitting Shiva, they call it. I remember somebody telling me once after his mother died, I remember him telling me, "Oh, I know I should be over it by now." And I thought, well, what's the timeline on that? It's not true. But I appreciate what Verena's bringing up, that faith, and that's true about my cousins also. They became so close as a family, right? Because they supported each other. And ritual is one of the ways that we speak, that we communicate with that spiritual presence, because we can't intellectually. Right? So ritual is in a way, a source of communication with the divine. And next Tuesday, I'm planning that we'll do a little simple puja as a way of communicating, expressing our intention, our connection with the divine. And that brings me to something I want to suggest as something to do between now and then. And that is on the diagram that I showed, most of you, I think, indicated that you related to something there. I'm going to suggest that you may have this already, that you set up an altar and you put something that represents the divine. And that altar can simply be a windowsill or the top of a shelf. You don't have to actually have a formal altar, but maybe you do have one. And can you place on it a picture or a symbol or a statue or a light, something that resonates with you? And can you practice I'll say it this way. Can you practice acknowledging the limitations of your mind and opening yourself to receive guidance? You could call this praying for guidance. Right? Many people don't relate to the idea of prayer because of the way it's associated so much with traditional religion. But I see how beautifully it works if I am willing to set aside my personal preferences and call out to God in the way that I understand. And open my heart and invite guidance to be present. And if I'm sincerely willing to set aside whatever I would prefer so that I genuinely feel what's right for me, I always get some answer. I found that to be very powerful. I only came to that when I was desperate, right? It was not my natural way. But when I got desperate enough, when all my willpower literally was insufficient and brought me to my knees, I found myself able to pray in that way. And now I understand the importance of recognizing the limitations of this head, right? And opening myself to be guided by something much more spacious. Even Eckhart Tolle, whose teaching is mostly non-religious, he says, whenever you make the shift from identifying with your thoughts, feelings, and sensations to dwelling in this unchanging awareness, he said, a higher intelligence begins to operate in you. It's very much the same thing. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it's very much the same thing. When I pray for guidance, I may use a personification, a symbol, a representation of the divine in some way. But what I'm really doing is I'm tapping into this presence that's already within me. It's just that representation, that form, that being, that saint, that symbol is the doorway for me to allowing myself to set aside my personal preferences and feel that guidance that comes from beyond me. Now, so I want to suggest that everyone find something that represents that divinity to you. Have it on your altar or have it somewhere, and that you practice connecting to it and asking for guidance. Just as a suggestion, as a practice. Then let me ask, any other questions or comments? Sarani had a great question for us to consider about grief. Any other comments? Do you find the visualization that I led interesting or useful in any way? Okay, we got some thumbs up on that. Okay, yeah. And that's something we can do more of next Tuesday as well. And that is called metta meditation or loving kindness meditation. It's also a beautiful practice. I'll share with you one last thought. It's something else you could practice or work with in your daily life. Very portable. Yeah. Now, I'll share with you kind of a funny way that I came across this idea and I experimented with. You know how in the movies, there's often a secret agent? In many movies, there's a secret agent. And the secret agent can always tell who are the other secret agents, right? You can't tell that. I mean, this person just reading the newspaper or sitting at a table in the cafe having a coffee. You can't tell anything, but the secret agent can tell that that's a secret agent. Right? You know how that happens. So I came out of a movie like that once, and I started looking around at the people on the street. This was in New York. I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if any of these guys are secret agents. And then I thought to myself, what if I was a secret agent? And then I thought, but I don't want to be a secret agent for the CIA. Right? So I thought, I'm going to be a secret agent for compassion. And I took on this practice. I'm going to secretly meet the people on the street with compassion. And without saying anything, I'm just going to offer them loving kindness. I'm going to wish them well. And that's going to be my secret agent sort of job, undercover compassion. So I'll just offer that to you as another practical way to play with this theme. And the purpose of it is dual. It keeps our hearts open. And that's what makes our lives meaningful. That's what transforms our lives from mundane to meaningful, is to have love be present element in the way that we go about the day. Right? And it brings benefit to others. Even if someone doesn't know it, just to look at someone with compassion in your heart. Did you ever try that? The person who's begging on the side of the street, that you pause and you look them in the eyes and you say, take care. Even if you didn't give them money, you look them in the eyes and you say something really kind to them. It's powerful. It's powerful for them and for you. So I want to suggest that also as a practice. So we're at the end of our time now. I appreciate you all coming and giving me some feedback. I hope you can come next Tuesday because I have more things I want to do to work with healing. And I'll bring those poems. But many of you know the integral yoga tradition. And in our school, we always end a program by sending healing and peaceful energy outward in the form of a chant, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. So I want to chant that 3 times. Invite you to join me in chanting it. Let's close our eyes. First, knowing that we want to send this peaceful energy outward, first, generate that energy in yourself. Within yourself, feel this energy that you would like to share, that you'd like other people to feel, to experience. Feel that energy. Feel that you can send it out through the heart as we chant. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth dispel all ignorance. Victory to that light. Jai Sri Satguru Maharaj Ki Jai. Okay, thank you all for coming. Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good, good.
Thank you.
I hope to see you next Tuesday. Those of you who are in the area, we have a community meeting this Saturday, if you can come. Actually, you can come online as well. All right, bye now.
Bye.